For the first time in nearly 100 years, Bosch finally comes out with an 18-volt trim router. This is something they've never done before, but did they do it right the first time? Let's find out. Bosch is a very popular tool company that has been around for a long time, getting close to 100 years. 96 years ago, in 1924, they started making power tools. Fun fact, the very first power tool was a hair trimmer. But they really started into cordless tools in 1969 with a hedge trimmer, and if I remember right, it weighed something like 12 or 13 pounds, 5.5 kilograms, you do the math on that. And then in 1984, they come out with the first cordless hammer drill on the market, and they kept innovating on their cordless tools ever since. They did come out with a trim router, a 12-volt trim router in 2018, but their 18-volt trim router, everybody and their mama has already come out with it, and now finally, Bosch decides, you know what, let's give it a go. Now, since it took them so long to finally come out with a router, you would think that they would take everybody else's on the market, take a really good close look at it, and then make yours better. That's what I would do, right? That's what most people would do. Did they do that? Well, I think they did because there's two very unique features on here that I haven't seen anybody else do in this way, or at all in one case. And this is one of the most powerful cordless trim routers that's in production today. So this should be exciting. Let me show you everything this can do, and if you want to check this out or any tool you see today, I'll link them in the description and the pinned comment or the shop button here on YouTube to help you find them easier. This should be fun. Thank you, Bosch, for putting this in an actual storage case. I don't know of any other trim router, let me know if it is, that comes in a box like this. I have seen other regular or full-size routers, but not a trim router itself. And I would compare this, just initial feel of this box, similar to a Festool Sustainer, kind of that build quality. Not quite pack out quality, but still really nice. Ow, check it. I absolutely love that they put this foam insert in there. That is fantastic. Thank you. This is next level quality. It's very similar to what pack out does, like with their track saw. Really nice insert in there, although they didn't do that with their router, which was quite disappointing. But this is a welcome sight to see. Also, Festool does this with some of their tools too. I like to see that. Out of the box, first thing I noticed, there's 4 different dust collection adapters that are included. So they're gonna make sure the dust collection is on point, or at least I think so. And then also you're getting the charger, you're getting a 4 amp hour battery, you're getting some parts and pieces, bolts, collet, things like that. You're also getting that edge guide, which I really appreciate. Anytime there's an edge guide included with a router, it is a welcome addition because you'll use this all the time. You do get a set of owner's manuals, which most people won't read, but you really should take a look at them. There's a lot of cool stuff in there that you may not have known. You're getting the plunge base if you get this kit. You can also buy this bare tool without the plunge base, but if you don't have a plunge base, man, this feels high quality. We'll see how it performs, but just the overall first impression, this feels very nice, which you would expect from Bosch, who's been making one of the best plunge routers in the business, the 1617. It's one of my favorite routers. I have it in my router table. I reviewed it on the channel, compared it to the DeWalt. I think it's an amazing router. This is a different style plunge base than what is on the 1617, but I like this handle design. Very ergonomic feeling. And of course, the star of the show, and that is this trim router. This is the Bosch Colt 1.39 horsepower or peak horsepower trim router. Now, this is probably one of, if not the most powerful, at least on paper, cordless trim routers that's in production currently. And this also has 2 very unique features that I think is going to set it apart from any other router that's currently on the market. I think it's going to be one of those that's like, I wish every other router had that. We'll see you in testing, and I'll show you what those are if you stick around. Not only is the inserts and the overall construction really nice, this is also a part of the L-Box system. The system? So if you do have this style box, you'll be able to connect those to your other L-Box parts and pieces. Now, before we put this thing to the test and see how it's actually going to perform, and then also compare it to some of the other top brands, these are some of the features that set this thing apart. First, you get 4 of these dust collection adapters that I don't think any other come with that many, if I'm not mistaken. 2 of these are gonna work just as a fixed base router, and then 2 of these work with the plunge base. So you get kind of the best of both worlds here as far as dust collection goes, no matter if you're using the plunge or the fixed base. You're also getting the edge guide here, which is extremely easy to install. It's literally one little knob there that you tighten down to lock it in place. And then you have the adjustment knob on the bottom that slides it in and out. Again, I think every router should come with an edge guide, but not all do. You're also getting a 4 amp hour battery here with this combo kit. If you picked up the combo kit, this is the Core 18 volt, and it is part of the amp share. Now, I'm not really familiar with Bosch tools. This is my first cordless Bosch tool, but from reading, they have a program called Amp Share where, if I'm not mistaken, these batteries can be used on a variety of different brands, and those brands' batteries can be used on Bosch. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll show it on screen here. I think that's what's going on. If so, that's pretty cool. Now, this has 2 bases in this kit, with the fixed base and the plunge base. The fixed base is where we see one of those very unique features that I haven't seen on any other router, and it's that little red knob, which we'll get to. This slides up and down like any other fixed base. It also has the locking lever like most of these bases do. But this one has something I've not seen, where you twist to lock it in place. You can see where it notches out where you slide this on. Anywhere inside of this larger notch, you can go ahead and lock that down, and then that just secures it in place. Before you lock this lever in though, you can lock that down. Come around here to this little knob right here, and this is your very fine-tuned adjustment for the depth. This also features a 1-tool bit change, so you can just use this little red lever, slide it to the locking position, and it will lock the arbor in place so that you don't need 2 wrenches to change the bit. And then from there, once it's in there, you just go back to the unlock and it'll free spin again. This is also a variable speed router, so you can dial in the speeds that you need for the bit that you're using. First power up. This is nice. It's got a soft start motor, so it's not going to jerk to life, and it has a brake on it. So as soon as you turn the power off, it stops. That is nice. Not all routers have that fast of a brake or even a brake at all. So this has a very unique feature that I haven't seen on any other trim router. I could be wrong. It has happened once or twice, but this has an auto shut off on it if you drop it, and it's not on the actual drop itself, it's actually on the impact. So if you bump this or it gets bumped when it hits the ground, it shuts off the motor so that the bit doesn't just keep spinning. I would like to see something similar to the DeWalt's anti-shut-off where it's anti-rotation, so if it detects that rotation, it shuts the motor off. I would like to see that on maybe an acceleration instead of the actual bump. So if you dropped it, the actual speed of it dropping would turn the motor off versus the impact itself. If you drop it, the natural instinct is to reach and grab, and that could, you could grab the bit. But I still appreciate that they put the safety feature on there that if it does impact, it goes off. Another thing you'll notice is when it does shut itself off, you get a flashing light. Both of those LED lights start flashing. It will not come back on until you turn the power switch off and back on, and that doesn't matter if you take the battery out, put it back in. You'll also see a slower blinking light letting you know that the power switch is actually on. You can turn that off, then back on, and then the router will work again. Now let's talk about the plunge base. I think this is a great addition to a palm router simply because of how well this is done. This is a very nice plunge base. Some plunge bases are kind of jinky and not done all that well. I think this is well thought out. There's several features here that I think most people will appreciate having on a plunge base. Changing from your fixed base to the plunge base, very simple. Flip that switch, just pull the router out. Dropping it in, you have to put it in a specific way. There's a little nub sticking out inside there that has to go into the router slot so that it all locks in perfectly. And then that, of course, the same lever switch or similar lever switch there that will really lock it down. Now, as far as the plunge base goes, I really do like how they do this, where I can push the lever. It's very ergonomic because it's right there at your thumb. Push it down, and wherever you let go at is where it'll stop. So you're not having to figure out your spot and then push the lever. You literally just let go where you want it. Now, as far as adjustments go on this base, you do have this nice little scale here. You can set the rod anywhere you want, the depth adjustment rod, and you can set this little scale indicator anywhere you need to. The scale is inches and millimeters, so everybody will be happy. Then you can just lock that down. As far as the depth style turret goes, there's 7 different positions here to choose from, and 2 of those have micro adjustments with that flat head screw. That way you can back out and adjust in any number way you want. And also the depth adjustment rod does have some micro adjustment built in as well. So there's infinite possibilities as far as depth goes, so long as you're within the depth ranges. As far as accessing the controls while in the plunge base, the power switch, no problem, within thumb's reach there. The variable speed is kind of tucked in behind this post, a little more challenging to get to, but still you can manipulate that any way you need to. I just wish that that post wasn't in the way. All right, first use, we'll see how powerful it is and how well this dust collection works. First thing I did was use this 1/8 inch roundover bit and the dust collection adapter that goes with it. This is a Bosch bit too. I bought this whole set of Bosch on Amazon. I'll link to those as well. But it puts a nice finish on this 2x6 and 0 dust. Like, I was very impressed with that. You don't see that very often. The only other one that I've seen do this, only two. Milwaukee's much more expensive 2¼ peak horsepower router, and DeWalt's 2¼ peak horsepower cordless router. Both those have those type adapters on there, and they're much more higher price point. I'm sure there's others, but I do appreciate that they're in there, and it cuts down on that dust. And if you don't know, edge profiles create a bunch of dust, usually because there's no way to trap that dust on the outside of the bit, and these little adapters let you do that. I routed this very large chamfer on the edge of this board, and you can see some dust is escaping the dust collection. I would like to see that a little bit better, but honestly it's not that bad considering how much material I'm removing. Now, one thing I will say is the base of this is a little bit small for my liking. I like the bigger bases on some of the competitors, like this Ryobi, this Flex. You can see they have a larger area that you're able to balance on the edge of boards, especially for edge profiles. These smaller bases are good in some instances, but that's one of the problems I have with Makita routers. They also have a really small base. And why that matters is you'll see a little bit of imperfection right there on the end, and that's because it basically you lose balance. If you're not extremely careful there, it will tip on you a little bit, causing that little uh-oh. Next, I wanted to try a dovetail groove, and I set this exactly 3/8 of an inch using these little setup bars. I love these bars, they work so great. But this is where that micro adjustment fine tune is going to come in very handy, because I'm able to dial that in exactly 3/8 of an inch deep, because that's the depth that the match fit clamps, dovetail clamps, use. They have to be 3/8 inch deep on this dovetail groove. Now, cutting that first groove, I realized I made a mistake. Uh-oh, there's a little notch there, and the reason it moved is because I failed to tighten down this knob. So the actual edge guide moved while I was putting pressure on it. Make sure you snug that up. Once I snugged it up, everything was fine. I actually flipped the board over, made another groove, perfectly straight, using that edge guide. Now the match fit clamp will slide from one end to the other. So if you're building a workbench or anything like that, or even my jointing jig where I use the dovetail bit or the dovetail clamps, this is a really good use case for this, and you can use that edge guide to get those accurate grooves. One thing that impressed me with this instantly was 0 dust. Like, I say 0, 99% of the dust, 98% is being collected here. If you notice when I'm cutting this dovetail groove, it's not flying out the back. I've cut grooves before and it's just flying out the back. This dust collection is working very well. I did use the other adapter for the fixed base, and I'm very, very impressed with the dust collection so far. We'll try it with the plunge base, but so far with the fixed base, it's one of the better palm routers that I've seen as far as dust collection goes. And speaking of power, powering through a 3/8 inch full cut, there was no relief cut there. A lot of times you'll use a relief bit to make a groove, and then you'll put your dovetail bit in to do that. I didn't. I just plowed right through. Of course, this is pine, so it's a softer wood, but the motor didn't bog at all. And I was pushing it pretty good on that second run. So power is there. Now I want to use the plunge base to do plunge base things, and that is basically take steps down as we cut this groove. And as you see here, it worked very well. I use a stop block. I just use that dovetail groove and clamp down this board so we'd have a reference edge there, and I could make this groove perfectly straight, which we did. And just stepping down is very easy. This is a very well done plunge base, and I'm glad that we have all of those steps, because this router is less powerful than, say, something like a big old 40-volt Makita, and you can take bigger bites out of with a more powerful router. Doing those step downs, there was 0 lag on this motor. It did exactly what it should have done. Very easy to do. Dust collection was fairly good here. We are pulling out quite a bit of dust. Most of it stayed in the groove, so I think it's fair. Now I want to see how much oomph this motor had. So I just went down to the full depth for cutting here, about 7/8 of an inch. This is a 1/2 inch bit, and I just powered it on and pulled. And it didn't bog or anything. Now you hear the bit screaming, but you don't hear that motor bogging. It did a very good job. There's plenty of power to do anything you're going to need to do with a trim router. Now I'm no stranger to cordless palm routers, so how does the Bosch stack up against the competition here? Well, first and foremost, I think Bosch has a very nice ergonomic design. What I mean by that is it's not overly big so that it's not going to start hurting your hands. Where I find that the Flex and the DeWalt, which are much larger around and much harder to hold for long periods of time. So it starts getting some hand cramps and things like that. While I do like these routers and think they're very, very nice, I even put this one in my little mini router table. I think it's a very good router, but I think they're just a little bit too big for extended use because of the hand fatigue. But as far as adjustments go, you know you have the fine tune here. Well, the way the DeWalt and Flex work, they have basically a ring that twists, and I also really like this design as far as adjusting a router. This is one of the better designs for fine tuning, and then also this one. So as far as fine tuning goes, you're not gonna have any trouble here, and they have plenty of power to do whatever you're gonna need. Now Makita's trim router is one that it's not my favorite, mainly because of how this adjusts. There's so much slop in there, and it's really hard to get everything dialed in and then lock it in place. So not really a lot of fine tuning here. Again, my least favorite, and that smaller base on there is very difficult to use on edge profiles. Now for the last couple of years, my favorite trim router to use is the Milwaukee. I think it's one of the better made ones. It has a very nice ergonomic design, so it's not cramping my hand or anything like that. And you can see that the Bosch is very similar on how your hand fits around the base of the router. So I like that feature. Now as far as adjustments go on these three routers, they're all owned by TTI, so they all share a very, very similar adjustment system with the lever and the fine tuning knob as you see on the Milwaukee. The Rigid has a very similar operation, and the Ryobi as well. But I do like this style also. It is a very nice adjustment, so those three are also excellent. Really the only one that I don't care for is the Makita. As far as safety features go, the Bosch is the only one that has that drop detection that'll turn the motor off. It also has a feature that is really nice here because when you lock the spindle, so you're doing the bit change, when you flip the switch and you rotate the spindle until it locks, you hear it click. When you push the power button, nothing happened, it just flashes. It will not operate. That's gonna prevent you from hopefully cutting yourself. You should always take the battery out, but if you forget or you're in a hurry or whatever happens, then you lock the spindle. That's the key. If you lock the spindle, even if you hit the power button, it will not operate. The only other one that does that is the Flex. It has basically a spindle lock slide switch. When it's engaged and the spindle is clicked in locked, it also will not power on. And if you compare this to all the other trim routers that I just showed you, this one is probably the lightest of the bunch. With the 4 amp hour battery on there, none of the other ones feel this light. So if you're using this in a non-vertical position, that will be a welcome addition as well. Now if you compare this to some of the other cordless plunge routers out there, now I know it's not really the same class because all of these three, Milwaukee, Makita, and DeWalt, are the 2.25 peak horsepower. This is 1.39 peak horsepower, a much smaller footprint, but I find it interesting that they all kind of share the similar ergonomics. So the forward leaning handles, the thumb lever placement is always on the left thumb there, and the turret style depth stops are all very similar. What I like about this Bosch is it is a much smaller and manageable package here where you have everything is really compact, lightweight, easy to maneuver. Probably one of the worst ones is the Milwaukee, and I'm a Milwaukee fanboy, but this one is so top heavy. It's one of my least favorite in this category. The DeWalt, by far my favorite. While also heavy, it's not top heavy, it's well balanced. And of course it does have the anti-rotation feature, which I wish this one had. Wish they all had it. And the Makita is probably very similar in feel as the DeWalt, but none of these really compare to this one because of how compact it is, yet it is also still very powerful. Not as powerful as these, but still I think you're getting a good bang for the buck. That's not all sunshine and rainbows here. There's a couple of things that really annoyed me a little bit, and I just wish they were so close to being perfect, or as perfect as you can get. First and foremost, there is an edge guide with your fixed base, but there is no edge guide that works with this included in the package, the plunge base. I do have a Bosch edge guide for my other router, and this is a fantastic edge guide, and it fits exactly where it should into those two slots, slides right in there. But the problem is there's no bolts to lock it down, and nothing that's included will fit in those holes. And I even borrowed a couple of bolts from my DeWalt router, and those also will not fit. They're too big. If you're not going to give me a plunge base, you give me all this hardware, throw in a couple of screws that will fit that hole. Not sure why that is the case, but They don't. And another thing that kind of rains on the parade here is this base. I do wish that there was a little bit bigger base on here, or at least the one that kind of has a square side to it so that you get a little extra stability. I have a bunch of cordless tools from a bunch of different brands, almost every one of them now Bosch. And this may be common and it may loosen up over time, but one annoyance is the battery is very kind of, it's hard to get on and off. The button push is difficult. The slide in and out is difficult. And even getting it back seated is a little bit difficult. Now that may loosen up over time, but man, it ain't gotta be that hard. Nobody else is that difficult to get off. I don't know why theirs are. And another thing that kind of bugs me here that for this price point I think should be better, Bosch, is the fact that they're using stickers. Especially right here where it says Colt and brushless motor. That's a sticker that, man, come on, man. Come on. And then also right under where you get the model GKF 18V-25, that is also a sticker. And that's a minor quip, but I think at this price point we shouldn't have stickers on these things. Now this basically warning label is a sticker on all of them. Milwaukee, all of them, DeWalt, all have that sticker, that's fine. But I think if you're gonna be using your logo and your branding, then it should be like the Bosch logo here that's actually basically formed into the case. Very similar to what Milwaukee does. Milwaukee Fuel formed into the case, Fuel brushless formed into the case. The only sticker is right there on that warning label. That could be done better. As far as pricing goes here, I think it's fair for what you're getting. I paid $399 for this entire kit. I paid for this, nobody's sponsoring this. And I think for that price, I'm okay with what I've got. Now, I'm sure there's gonna be sales and things like that if you're wanting to hold out and wait for those whenever they come around. But I think for $399 for the plunge base, the fixed base, the edge guide, plus all the dust collection kit, plus the box, I think $399 is a fair price point because this is a really nice router. It's a high-end router. It's not a cheap router. You can also get just the bare tool if you're already in this platform. You're also getting a battery and a charger in this kit, did I mention? But if you just want the bare tool, you can get the bare tool with the edge guide and the dust collection that fits the fixed base for $219. That's on par with most of the other brands, including Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita. Like a lot of these cordless routers are right there at that price point. And then if you went and added plunge bases and all that to it, you're probably gonna be at about the same price point as this entire kit. I think this kit is the buy, especially if you're not in this platform. But if you are, you can get just a fixed base, but you're gonna be missing out on this. And this is one of the things that makes this so special, I think, the plunge base. And speaking of things to buy, this is a fantastic little router bit set that I bought. I think I got this on Amazon. I'll link to it in the description. But you get 6 of the most common style bits that you're gonna use. And these are really nice bits. They stay sharp. I've been using them quite a while. So it took Bosch over a half century to come out with a cordless router. Probably one of the last to the game here, but I think they did a fantastic job with everything that's included, especially in this combo kit. I think that's the way to go unless you just want the fixed base. This is a fantastic little router. Moving to the top of some of my favorites. We'll see how it does long term. If you like this video, you gotta check out how to use a router. 99% of people don't know. Clicking that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. Why haven't you clicked it?